Hi, this is Dr. Perez with a follow-up video on heart murmurs. So in my last video, I did a video on how heart sounds are created or produced. And so that was very important to put that video out prior to talking about heart murmurs. So if you did not watch that video, please watch that video prior to watching this one on heart murmurs. All right. So early on in my prior video, I said that it is the closure of the valves that creates the heart sound. Now, heart murmurs are distinct heart sounds distinguished by their pitch and their longer duration. So they are attributed to turbulent blood flow and are usually diagnostic of valvular heart sounds. So at times, they may also present innocent flow murmurs, especially in the young adult. A stenotic valve has an abnormal narrow valvular orifices that obstruct blood flow, as in aortic stenosis, and can cause a characteristic murmur. So does valves that fail to close fully, as in aortic regurgitation. And it could, keep in mind, even though I'm saying aortic, it could be mitral valve also. So what happens when it fails to fully close? This allows blood to leak backwards in a retrograde direction and produces a regurgitant murmur. So know that stenosis and regurgitation, they do create murmurs. So stenosis is the hardening of the valves. And so what happened, it doesn't open properly. It doesn't open properly. So it's a hardening of the valve, doesn't open properly. Let's look at regurgitation. It does not close properly. And look at what a normal closed valve should look like. So let's look at, this is a recap in where on the chest you would listen for each sound. So to solve a murmur question correctly, only two pieces of information are needed, and it is vital that you understand this. You're looking for the timing of the murmur, whether it is systolic or diastolic, and we spoke about that in the video that talks about heart sounds. And you're also looking for the location of the murmur, whether it is aortic or in the mitral valve area. So if the question states that you hear a murmur in the second intercostal space right of the border, you know it's aortic. What you're going to need to find out now, is this diastolic or is this systolic? And so there's a well-known mnemonic that is used to identify whether it is regurgitation, whether it is systolic, whether it is aortic, and whether it is stenosis. So let's get into that section. So for me to remember, I say Mr. Ass or Mr. Love Ass. So this is used for systolic. The Mr. MR is mitral regurgitation. What you'll hear for the murmur, it will be a pansystolic or a holosystolic murmur. It's best heard at the apex of the heart or the apical area. Do not get the word apex or apical area mixed up with aortic. So the top of the heart is actually the base of the heart. The pointed part of the heart is actually called the apex or the apical area. And this, the mitral valve sound, as noted earlier on, can be heard mid-clavicular line of the fifth intercostal space, left side, or the left mid-clavicular line, fifth intercostal space. So this is a loud, blowing, and high-pitched murmur. You use the diaphragm of the stethoscope to hear this sound. Now, the S on it stands for systolic. So we know systolic. The AS stands for aortic stenosis. Aortic stenosis is a mid-systolic ejection murmur, and this murmur is best heard at the second intercostal space at the right side of the sternum, and it can also radiate to the neck. Okay? The sound can radiate to the neck. So again, how do you identify whether this is mitral valve regurgitation or aortic stenosis? You can use the mnemonic Mr. Ass. And Mr. is mitral valve regurgitation, and the AS stands for aortic stenosis. And we know that these two are systolic murmurs. If you can identify where to listen for the mitral valve sound, which is the left side mid-clavicular line, fifth intercostal space, you will know that that's the mitral valve. If it is heard during systolic, you know that it's regurgitation. For the aortic stenosis, once they say right border of the sternum, you know it is aortic. If it is a systolic murmur, then it is stenosis, right? So let's look at Miss Hard. The D stands for diastolic murmur. So MS, mitral valve stenosis, this will have a low-pitched diastolic rumbling murmur. Best heard at the apex or apical part of the heart, is also called an opening snap. You use the bell of the stethoscope to hear this. For the AR, we know that it is aortic regurgitation. This is a high-pitched diastolic murmur, best heard at the second intercostal space at the right side of the sternum. Very high-pitched blow murmur, and you use the diaphragm for that. So if you notice that for low-pitched sound, you use the bell. For high-pitched sound, you use the diaphragm. In addition to that, you know that with mitral valve either stenosis or mitral valve regurgitation, you still listen to both of them at the apex or the apical area of the heart. What's going to distinguish if it is mitral valve stenosis or mitral valve regurgitation is if it is diastolic or if it's a systolic murmur. So you can use, as noted early on, Mr. Ass, mitral valve regurgitation. We know it is systolic, or it is aortic stenosis, depending on where they say the sound is coming from, or where they say you hear the murmur. That will identify, is it mitral valve or is it aortic? And then you have to find out next, is it diastolic or is it systolic? Now, there's grading of murmurs. There's grade 1 to grade 6. Now, this is a whole lot of information to remember about murmur. Grade 1 is a very soft murmur heard only under optimal condition. In grade 2, this is a mild to moderate loud murmur. In grade 3, loud murmur that is easily heard once the stethoscope is placed on the chest. Grade 4, this is a louder murmur, first time that a thrill is present. A thrill is like a palpable murmur. And I've seen a lot of questions with that when is it the first time the practitioner will be able to feel the thrill? And that is a grade 4. For grade 5, a loud murmur heard with edge of stethoscope off the chest, the thrill is more obvious. That means they don't have to even put the stethoscope on the chest to hear the murmur. For grade 6, the murmur is so loud that it can be heard with the stethoscope off the chest. The thrill is easily palpated. So let's look at from grade 4 to grade 6. Please remember that is it at grade 4 that you can actually, the thrill is identified beginning at grade 4. Grade 5, we said that is a very loud murmur heard with the edge of the stethoscope off the chest. So it's just the edge. But with grade 6, it says that it's even louder. It says that it can be heard with the stethoscope off the chest completely. While grade 5 said that the edge of the stethoscope is off the chest. So make sure that you can distinguish between both. From grade 1 to 3, 1 we said is very soft, 2 is mild to moderate, and grade 3 is loud. That can be heard with the stethoscope. So that's in grade 3 when you easily hear it with the stethoscope. So here are my references. I hope this short video on murmur is very helpful. Please make any comment in the box below. Thank you so much for watching.